The White House tonight says the signing ceremony for the legislation repealing the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy prohibiting gays from serving openly in the military will be this Wednesday. But it could be months before the historic change takes effect. The law gives the Pentagon time to plan a transition. And Defense Secretary Robert Gates says he will be, quote, approach this process deliberately. So how long should it take? Alex Nicholson served in the Army Intelligence Collection until he was discharged in 2002 under the Don't Ask, Don't Tell rules. Peter Sprigg is the Senior Fellow for Policy Studies at the Conservative Family Research Council, which opposed the repeal. Alex, I want to get to you first in talking about, and as you talk about how long you think the Pentagon deserves to implement the transition, also factor in these numbers. The Pentagon did this big survey. It's one of the reasons they swayed some votes in the end, because overall, 30% of people in the military said there would be a negative or very negative reaction. But if you ask in combat units, Army combat units, 48% said it'd be negative or very negative. 58% of Marine combat units, negative or very negative. Should there be some distinction when you repeal the policy and gays can serve openly? Should it be different in a combat unit on the front lines, or does it have to be across the board the same?
I think that's a really good question. You know, the Pentagon's been studying this issue for more than 50 years. They've done more than 50 reports on this. And this latest iteration, they've had over 9 months to do a very thorough and comprehensive report on exactly how to go about implementing the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. You know, they may take a couple of extra months after the certification is signed. We don't know that. But, you know, I mean, I think the
How
bottom
long do you
line,
think is the bottom line for you? If it's 3 months, that's okay. But if it's 6 months, do you start to question?
I think about the first quarter of 2011 is about as long as I think they reasonably need. I mean, like I said, they've already done studies on this thing for 50 years. They've had 9 months to prepare. They know what they're doing. We already have gays serving openly in the military right now defying the law. About 3 months is about all they're really going to need realistically.
And Peter, Tony Perkins, who runs your organization, issued a statement tonight, and I want to ask you about it because, you know, we have disagreements in this town, and some of them are legitimate policy conversations, and you heard us talking earlier tonight. Some of them are more political arguments. But Tony Perkins makes this statement tonight. The Senate repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell because it endears them to one of the greatest sources of campaign dollars in America, the homosexual lobby. And as that lobby stands triumphantly on the rubble of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, they'll tell you that they can already see marriage in the distance. A couple of key points there. Number one, you really think that these senators, Democrats and Republicans, voted to do this for campaign cash, not because they thought it was the right thing to do?
Well, I think that that's a part of the reason why Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid made this a top priority during the lame duck session. It's kind of astonishing to me that with so many other things that they had to deal with funding the government, with preventing a massive tax increase on January 1st, dealing with a major arms limitation treaty, that they would even give any attention in a lame duck session to this issue.
They've managed to do all that, though, and still address this issue.
Well, they have. I think they've been sort of shameless in trying to push through a large liberal agenda before they lose the reins of power in January.
Do you honestly see the same-sex marriage debate now coming next? Or I could cynically ask, is your organization raising the prospect of that so it can raise money?
Well, I've seen quotations already in the media and have been asked about it by other reporters about the homosexual movement seeing marriage as the next frontier, and this as giving momentum to the legalization of same-sex marriage. I think the same-sex marriage issue is very different from this issue. This was an issue in which you had homosexuals as individuals being excluded from participating in the military for, we believe, valid reasons, but nevertheless it was directed at individuals. The marriage issue is about granting special benefits, special affirmation to same-sex couples, to homosexual relationships. I think that's a very different kind of issue.
Alex, are there any factors from your servers where you would think, all right, if the Pentagon does this, I may not like it, but I understand it? If there's any kind of a segregation, any kind of an opt-out, anything, or does this have to be, for it to work, universally across the board, like when racial integration happened in the Army?
I think the best thing that the Pentagon could do would be to do it across the board and to do it swiftly and quickly. I think even the senior military leadership, even the Commandant of the Marine Corps said, look, if you're going to do this, I don't necessarily agree with it, but if you're going to do it, look, do it quickly and do it swiftly. You know, they'd certainly be shooting themselves in the foot, I think, the more they drag it out.
And again, back to Tony Perkins' statement tonight. He goes on to list 12% of the military surveyed threatened to leave the service. Then he lists all the Republicans who voted for this, and he says at the end, are they prepared to accept the responsibility for losing those 264,600 soldiers, meaning if they leave the military? Right. And he goes on to say this, and others who may be injured or killed because of their votes. Injured or killed because gays are going to be allowed to serve openly in the military? It's controversial. It's going to be tough for some people. All social change is, you think it's wrong, he thinks it's right, but injured or killed?
Well, that was an issue not raised first by us, but raised by General Amos, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, who just last week said that he believed that with this distraction, it could result in increased casualties. A specific example of that was raised in congressional testimony earlier in the year by General John Sheehan, who testified to a specific incident when he was in Vietnam, when some soldiers on the front line, there was one who attempted to molest the other.
Vietnam was 40-some years ago. I mean, I hope people have understood a little bit. Not my job to take sides in debates, but I would hope people understand it a little bit better now. We're almost out of time.
But this was sexual assault and harassment.
Do you think it's possible anyone will be injured or killed because of this?
I really don't think so, and I think that's proven by the fact that you already have gay men and women serving openly in the military today. You have many, many hundreds defying the law, commanders looking the other way, peers accepting openly gay men and women, and you've not had any discharges for 40, 45, 50 days already. You haven't had anybody injured or killed because don't ask, don't tell. It was ridiculous.
Alex Nicholson, Peter Sprigg, it is a controversial debate. As the implementation plan goes forward, we'll bring you back. We'll continue the conversation. Thank you both for coming in tonight.